Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're embarking on a mission, one requested by you, the learner. And it challenges something pretty fundamental, I think, our assumptions about personal resilience, and what true freedom really means. We are diving into a thoughtful piece, a really deep exploration of acceptance and quiet courage. It's from the Global Observer, and it's titled The Strength of Letting Go. Now, usually, right, when we talk about strength, our minds jump straight to persistence. We think of like the grit needed to hold on tighter, maybe to fight harder against the odds, or to never ever give up on some demanding goal. Strength, we think, is defined by our capacity to endure, to grasp things tightly. But the material we've pulled together today, well, suggests this definition might be profoundly flawed. So our mission here is to unpack a kind of counterintuitive truth that real transformative power, it seems, is found in the opposite action and the deliberate, quiet courage to release. Okay, let's unpack this. So much of our lives, so much of our psychological energy is spent believing strength means holding on.
Just think for a second about what you carry every day. Maybe you're holding on to that detailed 5-year plan, the one life completely ignored, or perhaps it's challenging relationships, maybe codependent ones, long after they should have ended. Or maybe, and this one's tricky, maybe you're holding on to the memory of old pain, past grievances, that career failure from years back. That holding, it creates weight, real weight. It's kind of like strapping a 50-pound backpack on before you start a marathon. Sure, you can still run, but you're burning massive amounts of energy just dealing with this unnecessary load. The central paradox here, the one this source highlights, is that the moment you choose to drop the bag, the moment you choose letting go, it's not weakness, it's not failure. According to this view, it is the definitive moment of strength. Okay, before we go further, it's really critical we clarify what letting go means in this context. Because, we often mistake it for indifference or apathy or just giving up. But the source really stresses that letting go is an active choice. It's not passive resignation. It's about actively trusting. Trusting what, exactly? Trusting that life can and actually will move forward without the heavy baggage you felt you had to carry. You're choosing to discard the weight, right? To free up your energy. You're not collapsing under the burden. It's a decision to move forward, unburdened. So if letting go is this pathway to lightness and freedom, why on earth is it so incredibly difficult? Why do we constantly find ourselves stuck in what the source calls the resistance loop? Well, the source material points to a core barrier, the universal human fear of loss, that really primal psychological urge to keep everything we have. Whether it's stuff, material things or specific expectations we have, or maybe a cherished emotional status, or even like an idea of who we are. That's what makes us cling so tightly to what we know, even when what we know is, frankly, miserable or painful. We cling to that familiar discomfort because the unknown future feels terrifying, like a total void. And this clinging, it shows up in a couple of really specific high-energy ways that are probably draining your mental resources daily. The first one is clinging to past mistakes. Now, this goes way beyond just healthy reflection, okay? This is clinging, driven by a desperate, almost irrational desire to change the past, retroactively. Think about the energy you spend rerunning that disastrous presentation in your head, or replaying an argument, trying to edit your lines years after it happened. You're basically fighting battles that are definitively over. Why? Purely because you wish reality had played out differently. You're spending today's energy on a past that is completely, totally fixed, immutable. And the second way we cling, by desperately trying to grab onto uncertain futures. We're driven by this anxious belief, right, that if we just worry hard enough, if we plan for every single contingency, try to control every little variable, that somehow this level of, let's be honest, neurotic control will protect us from future harm. You see this in the professional who can't enjoy their success now because they're paralyzed by fear of the next downturn? Or the parent spending every waking moment micromanaging their kid's life to prevent some theoretical failure 10 years from now. Okay, and here's what would get really interesting. Because the source argues that this resistance itself, this relentless desire for absolute control over a reality that is fundamentally uncontrollable, that is precisely what creates so much human suffering. It's often not the bad thing happening that causes the deep, lasting psychological damage. It's our constant, sustained refusal to accept that the bad thing has happened or, might happen. The resistance actually becomes heavier, more damaging than the original problem. Think about it. If you refuse to accept it's raining, you spend all your energy yelling at the sky instead of just, finding an umbrella. So, true freedom, this piece suggests, is only really available the moment we accept reality as it is, not as we wish it were, not fighting for it to match our detailed plans and expectations. And this brings us to what I think is the crucial aha moment of this whole deep dive, the profound difference between acceptance and resignation. And honestly, this distinction is vital for anyone trying to get their head around this topic properly. Okay, so to resign, that's giving up effort, stopping trying, becoming passive, maybe cynical. Resignation sounds like, it's all terrible, there's nothing I can do, so I quit. It's particularly an abdication of your personal agency. You're checking out. But acceptance, as it's described here, is something else entirely. It's an active, powerful, assertively calm kind of strength. It's actually the ultimate exercise of personal agency. Why? Because you are choosing your internal response no matter what the external situation is. Acceptance doesn't shout. It whispers. That's a nice way to put it. It's a strength that whispers, this is enough. I have done enough. I am enough. It's a moment of deep internal peace, one that recognizes the limits of external control, and then it chooses to focus all that remaining energy on what is actually possible. So, for example, resignation says, okay, I didn't get the promotion, so I'm just going to stop trying at work. Acceptance says, right, I didn't get the promotion. I accept that reality, and now I can focus all the energy I was spending fighting that decision or being bitter about it into maybe training for the next level or perhaps finding a better opportunity elsewhere. See the difference? It's active. And when you move into that state of acceptance, you unlock this power of release. Think about the actual psychological things you let go of. You release that exhausting anger you've held onto over old grievances. Poof, gone. You release all those unmet expectations you carried for other people, or maybe the unrealistic ones you had for yourself. And you release that corrosive grief tied up in failed plans of specific outcomes you were attached to. The practical, immediate effect of this release is profound. Once we let go of that psychological weight, the space in our minds and our hearts, space that was once totally consumed by worry, bitterness, resistance, suddenly it becomes open. Imagine your mind is like a super cluttered storage unit, just overflowing with relics of past pain and disappointment. Acceptance in this analogy kind of hands you the key to the dumpster, and once you clear out that space, it becomes available. And that open space isn't just empty, right? It becomes space for new beginnings, for genuine growth that just wasn't possible when you were busy defending the old stuff. And critically, becomes space for joy, as the source implies, beautifully, I think. You simply cannot hold a cup full of joy if both your hands are already completely full. Full of old grievances and demands for how things should be, rather than how they are. Okay, so we established the core philosophy here, right? The paradox of strength, and that crucial difference between acceptance and just giving up, resignation. But how do we actually do this, in the messy reality of everyday life? Because letting go clearly isn't a one-time event. It's something we probably have to choose over and over, maybe daily. Well, the source gives us a pretty brilliant, actionable framework. It's built around 3 core practices. The first step is something they call the control check. This is like your immediate countermeasure when you feel that stress rising. Your pulse starts beating faster because something isn't going your way. A deadline shifts unexpectedly, someone lets you down, the traffic is just awful. You pause, take a breath, and ask the critical question, is this specific thing actually within my sphere of control? Quote. This taps into some really foundational wisdom. You find it in lots of philosophies. If the answer is no, and let's face it, for life's major frustrations, it often is no, then the only sensible, strong, and frankly energy-conserving action is to immediately release the effort you are putting in to controlling the uncontrollable. You're not giving up on life here. You're just refusing to invest energy in a guaranteed lost cause. You accept the rain, and you focus on whether you brought your raincoat. Simple as that, conceptually at least. Okay, the second practice is journaling patterns. Now, the goal here isn't just to vent about your bad day, though that can be useful too. It's to actively notice and identify your personal patterns of clinging. This is where you get specific with yourself. Ask yourself, what emotional triggers keep popping up again and again? Are you constantly revisiting the shame of one particular mistake? Are your worries always circling around the financial future? Or maybe always tied to needing approval from one specific person? Look for those repeated themes, the recurring villains in your inner narrative, the past versions of yourself you just refuse to let retire. Identifying the pattern, actually naming the specific psychological weight you carry, that's probably the single most important step. It gives you the agency you need to start breaking free from it. And finally, the third step is gratitude focus. This is a deliberate, proactive practice. It's about shifting your attention and your energy. So instead of automatically mourning what's gone, the person who left, the opportunity missed, the past version of yourself you miss being, you consciously practice gratitude for what remains in your life right now, in this exact moment. It's a purposeful act, focusing on presence instead of absence. It's really an exercise in abundance thinking, acknowledging what you do possess. So if you lose a job, for instance, gratitude focus means acknowledging the skills you still have, the network that might still support you, the freedom you now have, perhaps, to define your next chapter. It basically cuts the psychological power of the loss by refocusing your mind on the assets that weren't taken away. The Source frames this whole process really beautifully, I think. It says, the practice of letting go, it isn't some destination you arrive at and suddenly you're free forever. Wouldn't that be nice? No, it's a lifelong journey, a continuous process of small, deliberate choices. But they remind us, and this is key, each small release makes us profoundly lighter. You might not drop that whole 50-pound bag today.
But dropping just one unnecessary rock, that's a victory. That counts. So wrapping this up, what does this all mean? Where have we traveled in this deep dive? We started with that common definition of strength, holding on tighter. We moved through exploring that painful, exhausting cycle of resistance, the one that leads almost inevitably to suffering. And we finished by hopefully embracing the quiet, assertive courage that's inherent in active acceptance. The core insight here, the real takeaway from this deep dive, seems to be this. In the lightness that we achieve through acceptance, we don't just find peace, although peace is pretty great. We actually discover a deeper, more profound kind of strength. It's the strength of freedom. And that freedom is defined by your ability, your choice, to manage your internal response, regardless of what uncontrollable external reality throws at you. You're essentially choosing your own state of being no matter the circumstances. That's powerful. So this entire dive really suggests that maybe our greatest personal liberation, it doesn't come from gaining more stuff or striving harder against forces we ultimately can't beat.
But maybe it comes simply from the deliberate, sometimes difficult choice to release what no longer serves us. It's a really powerful path to self-mastery, perhaps. So here's a thought to carry forward. How might acknowledging what is enough for you today, how might choosing to drop just one unnecessary weight, how might that change your approach to tomorrow? Something to think about. Until next time.